I somehow dodged World of Warcraft for 20 years, but not anymore. Join my companion GrindAndLift on his journey from an aimless bar brawler who just likes to flex his big guns to the most fierce and respected warrior in Azeroth. Now, let's see if the flagship of MMORPGs, World of Warcraft, can prove its worth. So here are the rules. To keep the new player's experience as authentic as possible, I decided not to use any guides or add-ons that provide comfort or benefits. Asking in-game is the way to go for me. Second, I also turned down free goodies or boosts from other players. With that being said, let's dive into the adventure and see what World of Warcraft has to offer. I decided to join the Alliance and not the Horde, and I went for a human warrior because why not? It was later in the game when I experienced that this basically was a terrible choice. But more on that later on my journey. One of the first things you realize when starting out in WoWClassic is how slow the pacing is. It really feels very cozy, and my protagonist GrindAndLift immediately felt at home in Elwynn Forest. He started with the basic MMO wolf slaying stuff to see some progress and to get that loot. And oh boy, the fights are really tough, even in the beginning. And this is a great design decision in my opinion. That will teach my big warrior to be alert and thoughtful at all times. No rushing and no random mob pulls, that does not belong here. But unfortunately that is what most modern MMOs teach us. So in WoWClassic we have to step back a little. Quests must be read because otherwise you have no idea where to go. In other MMOs I usually just skip quest dialogue for efficiency reasons, which often results in me turning my brain off while playing. But in Classic WoW, this will not work. There are no fancy quest markers on the map, only on the minimap if you are really close. This automatically involves you into the story and it immerses you into the game world. And this felt great. I would say the quest pacing is very similar to Lord of the Rings Online. After finishing the first quests around the Abbey, we arrived in Goldshire. My brawler was tempted to get hammered at the Lion's Pride Inn, but luckily, instead of getting smashed, I convinced him to head back in the woods and help Marshal Duggan out. Because we're not here for the fun, we're here for the duty. And his task was clear, slaying kobolds in the Fargo Deep Mine. And this is when he first realized the game world feels dangerous, and it is dangerous. It was already at level 5 when my glorious hero kissed the dusty floor for the first time. Thank God I do not play hardcore, as some of you suggested. Now that we got the reality check, we know that even 2 mobs of the same level as me can mean certain death. So what Grindy did after shamefully running away from several fights was pulling only 1 mob at a time. This might sound very boring from today's perspective, but this strategical approach was pretty fun, to be honest. If it was not possible for my hero to avoid multiple enemies, for example in very confined spaces, he was forced to use his valuable consumables or even team up with fellow players. And since consumables that can be used in combat are very rare in the beginning, it mostly was the second option when it came to tough situations. So Grindy overcame his social anxiety and teamed up with players like Koziki. Anyway, the player was actually much nicer than her name. And I have to say, teaming up in World of Warcraft Classic was probably the most enjoyable player encounters I've had in any MMO in a long time. Players are genuinely helpful and very chill. For example, this kind lady, Milada. She was killed by the not so wise decision of my brainless hammerhand Grindy to pull several murlocs at once. We gave them a glorious fight, but unfortunately both adventurers kissed the grass. Instead of receiving a huge rant, Grindy simply received a no problem. That really felt heartwarming, and we had further epic 15 minutes together slaying prowlers and bears. It's these meaningful moments that really make the game enjoyable. It's not about checklists, it's not about big numbers, it's just connection. I know that the tone in groups might change in endgame when it comes to a certain performance that you need in raiding, but all of my encounters so far with other players have been very much enjoyable. So what I realized was that this game rewards you for participating in social life of the game, May it be teaming up for a quest, asking for advice, or just using the very highly frequented auction house in the game. You can just feel that this game is very alive and has tons of players in it enjoying the vibrant world. If I had to summarize the game world after my first 20 hours of gameplay, I would use the term authentic. The world feels real and credible. It requires you to take action as a player and look for the stuff you really need. The first time Grindy stepped foot on the bridge to Stormwind was a massively impressive moment. Even though I experienced the same situation in countless games before, it just felt special and rewarding. Classic WoW does not hold your hand like most modern MMOs would. It demands you to actively look for the NPCs that provide quests, and it requires you to think about what you are missing to progress in the next section of the game. You are taken very seriously as a player, and you can progress in your own speed and on your own terms. For example, you can choose in which zones you want to level first. And having that freedom, in Stormwind, first that meant for my warrior finding the auction house, finding the mailbox, the bank, the vendors and more, and that took a lot of time. And as a side note, once again I was blown away by the sheer amount of players in the trade district. I guess finding groups for dungeons and quests will not be an issue. But now, let's get back to Grindy's adventure. On his path to becoming a great warrior, my junkie powerlifter slayed hundreds of gnolls, bandits, wolves, spiders and more, all while completing dozens of quests. Yet, the gear he obtained was far from being epic. His adventure to this point makes him feel more like a hobo using whatever gear he can get his hands on. And because of this, every tiny improvement and every piece of loot feels meaningful. But not only gear is rare, money is also quite hard to obtain. I am deliberately saying money and not gold, because the protagonist of this drama, Grindy, has not earned a single gold coin so far. Whatever he finds needs to be spent on the skills he needs to progress. No big numbers here, no big savings, no heroic boss loot, just pure survival and slow progress. But it is progress that builds his identity. His class matters, his race matters. It matters which skills and talent points he chooses. It all determines his fate in Azeroth. And after pursuing his warrior questline and learning from the tough veteran Marshal Haggard, his biggest treasure so far could be obtained. A green weapon to finally boost the damage. When choosing the weapon, he decided to go for the axe. With this weapon, he was finally able to deal some serious damage and eventually proceed to the next zone, Westfall. I've not seen your choices matter in this extent in any MMO so far, mostly because every choice is worth numerous hours of gameplay, and I'm not sure about this because I'm playing blind, but I think some of them might be irreversible. And the best part? There are many more choices to make in this adventure. If you have any suggestions which builds we should use or which zones we should visit next, feel free to let me know. See you next time.